Welcome back to the Jennifer Bukowsky Show. I'm delighted to welcome to the show Heather Cordasco from the Capital Research Center, our first in-studio guest in quite a while, right, Producer Trey? We didn't shake hands, everybody. Don't get your panties in a bunch. But she works for Capital Research Center, which if you've been listening or watching the show, you know I've talked about before their investigative work exposing Arabella advisors, the very smart idea on the left. I've covered their piece on the rare earth minerals, or vulnerability to China on that. They cover such a diverse array of topics. So welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm always happy to talk about capital research.
Well, what unites all of the things that Capital Research does? I mean, from doing movies like No Safe Spaces with Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla, to doing short animated films on YouTube, to publishing magazines covering everything from like a peek, here's this month's issue, you know, a peek into the mind of George Soros, my escape from Venezuelan socialism, an interview with Andreas Galarte, workers, not organized labor, are potential allies of conservatives. What unites all of these?
I always like to say that the last two letters of our name are AL rather than OL, even though we're located in the capital. If you think of capital in terms of money, we look at how money and influence are connected to a number of different issues: illegal immigration, radical environmentalism, because of course we all love the earth because we live here, charitable, and to some extent political giving, and unions. And we have set about to try to connect the dots and connect the money and the influencers. And, you know, many times people who are on the right or center right, they're really accused of being conspiracy theorists. And I always say, well, it's not a conspiracy theory if you have the evidence, if you have the data to back it up. And that's very much what we try to do. And we are very detailed. I mean, our magazine, as you said, it's diverse, but it's very, very detailed. And we try to communicate the type of information different ways so that people can absorb it. One of the reasons why we do the short videos is because we find that younger people are attracted to those short videos in a way that they may not be attracted to the magazine.
Interesting. So one of the most recent videos, if you go to their YouTube page, is on the 1619 project. Tell us about what Capital Research Center has done on that.
Well, I will, just in a little bit of broader vein, it's part of our series that's called The Architects of Woke. You know, that's kind of a new vernacular that we talk about being, you know, socially justice awakened. And we did one on transgenderism, which started in the 60s. We did them on Chapo Trap House. We have done, you know, a number of them, and this is one of the series. And this is really a very significant thing, that this project is being touted as such a good thing. It's being awarded a Pulitzer. This is essentially a very significant rewriting of American history. And if you accept that rewriting of history, you cannot exist in America the way that we've always thought it is. And so essentially a journalist decided that she was going to start this project, and she's brought in artistic elements as well as journalistic elements. But basically her premise is that in 1619, the country actually began when the first slave was brought here, and that essentially America was only meant for slavery, that it was meant to establish slavery because England was moving away from it. None of it's true. It's balderdash. The people that came in 1619 were indentured servants. They weren't just Black, that they were white. We really didn't start to see till the end of the 17th century the fact that slavery was, you know, put into practice in a much more widespread way. So we just did this just a few minute video, about 7 minutes long, and it's called the 1619 Project, and it essentially exposes her, but not just with our words, with the words of other experts. You know, Gordon Woods is one of them. There's just a number of different ways that can be looked at and proven to be absolutely false. The most concerning thing, and this is something that we point out in the video, is that in 3,500 school districts, that is being taught as curricula for K-12. And the New York Times made a magazine that was dropped off to these schools. So essentially, we're giving our students the idea that America is bad, that it was founded on the wrong thing. And that's simply not true.
It is alarming when you consider, it's being taught in 50 states, in 80 cities, in all of these schools, and it's actually factually inaccurate. One of the people behind it pushed back on it and said, look, I said, don't include the the founders were motivated by preserving slavery because there's no historical factual basis for that. And they proceeded with it anyways over that historian's objections.
Right.
And to teach that as history to kids is really doing them a disservice because it's basically, misinformation or propaganda that's being taught to them. And also it goes to this victim mentality, which is another disservice to kids. And it goes in your video, in the Capital Research Center video, touches on this. So does the Safe Spaces movie. Mm-hmm. What's so dangerous about people identifying themselves as victims?
Well, they have no chance in life. And they're going to expect that they're awarded reparations or something like that. In fact, Nicole, the author, says that is her goal, that she wants to get to the place where people are awarded reparations. She said her first goal would be to make white people not be white. But since that's not realistic, let's go ahead and go for the reparations. And, last name Woodson, African-American scholar, he said that when white people were at their worst, Black people were at their best, and that there were millionaires, people who actually came out of slavery, who moved into success, and no one told them that they couldn't. And so when you tell...
the first female self-made millionaire was a Black woman.
Yes.
The first female presidential candidate was a Black woman.
Yes. Yes. And so, this is a land of equal opportunity, but that does not equal outcome. And so when you start to tell people that that's what to expect, it really takes away for the ability for people to go higher. Everybody sort of stays at the same level or stays below.
Right.
And not only that, take away the economic side of it. You can never be happy if you think that you're a victim. It's one of the points.
It's outside of your control.
That's right.
It happens to you. It's a disservice to kids to tell them, look, you can't improve your lot in life. All these things external to you are keeping you down or keeping you a victim. We should be telling kids, like, even if you're in a wheelchair, this is what Adam Carolla says in the No Safe Spaces movie. If you're in a wheelchair, doesn't matter. You work hard, you outsmart everybody else, and you can do anything you want. That's our responsibility as parents,
exactly right.
as adults, to tell these kids, to communicate to them, not to message to them like, look, there are these things that happened hundreds of years ago that mean that you will never be equal, you'll never be treated with respect or whatever, that you can't have the American dream.
That's right.
And I was thinking about the 1619, like, there's another spin on it, which is that, African Americans have been here the entire time. So we're in the greatest country in Earth's history, and they've built it this entire time too. Like,
That's
they're
right.
American, like, to try to spin it that way, but no, they went kind of a negative direction with that.
Right. And it's very clear that people who came to, the North, they came because they wanted religious liberty. Now, there was some commerce, obviously, in Virginia. There was a charter. It was disastrous for a while. But the fact is, there is an integral blending of the races, and that we shouldn't be separating. We should be looking at what we can do together. We should offer expectations. We should offer great school systems. What does it say that many of the school systems that are being taught this are not academically where they need to be? And that's another whole thing. There's a female economist, I believe she's in the administration at this point. Her last name is Roth. She was speaking to a conference of young women and young conservative women. And she said, I've been asked to debunk the top 10 myths of communism, but I don't have time. So you pick 3 and I'll tell you what they are. So one of the ones that they picked was immigration. She said, that's easy. She said, you have a great country when people are trying to get into it and not trying to leave it.
To escape it.
That's exactly right. And even our poorest people in this country would be rich compared to so many other countries. They have air conditioning many a times. They have access to a car. They have access to employment. They have access to food. And yet we've allowed people to feel as if they are victims. And that's not a good thing. I remember the first time I spent a summer in Ivory Coast years ago. And the first time I went, I remember I came back and I thought, wow, I live in a fantastic country. And I grew up lower middle class. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth, but it always gave me a real respect. And I always felt like people need to be exposed to where they are in other countries to really appreciate that, because we don't want anybody to leave. We don't want anybody to be left out of the opportunity that the country has, but we also don't want to feel guilty for however we were born and however we weren't born or when we were born,
Right. And if you look at other countries, we're the only one where we have people that look like people from around the entire planet, and we're all Americans.
You know, I would encourage people to go to our website. Not only do we have, there's capitalresearch.org, but we also have Influence Watch, which is really our encyclopedia of the left. And there's a lot of information on 1619 there, as well as being able to watch the video in the Architects of Woke series. It's, you can spend hours learning, but it's really worthwhile to look at it.
All right, check it out. Heather Cordasco, thanks for joining us on the Jennifer Bukowsky Show.
Thank you so much for having me.